titled Value-Sensitive AI for Prayer, Balancing the Agencies Between Human and AI Agent in Spiritual Context. And this paper is authored by Kwon in collaboration with Donghui Yu, Shawen Argel, and Yuna Kang. Yes.
Thank you, Donghui, for that generous introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Suno, as introduced. I am currently studying in Georgia Tech, PhD student, and I will be presenting value-sensitive AI for prayer on behalf of my wonderful co-authors. All right, I would like to start this presentation with a question. What do we mean by better AI systems? Now, I have a privilege of working alongside a very traditional CS folks in Georgia Tech, and I observe how for many of them, better AI is often synonymous with systems that process data more accurately, faster, bigger in volume. So in other words, it's about reaching the end results more successfully and efficiently. But I want to question if that's really it. Because HCI and design have already troubled the notion of computer as such productive tools for as long as I can remember. So in the early era, while the goal of the design was to create a more intuitive, learnable, and efficient system that helps people reach the productive goal in the workplace, as time went by, these technologies sort of migrated outside of the office settings, and good technology now was more than just getting things done efficiently. So we started to look more holistically into the interaction itself, on how different social actors, values, and emotions entangle during the process of engaging with the technology, and this is where the so-called third generation HCI resides. But when we discuss AI, what I observe is that the larger goal in commercial AI systems still much remain in deriving certain results efficiently, rather than really attending to the different layers of experiences and values in interacting with these systems. And this is where our study resides. We wanted to explore how AI systems might look when entering a deeply human experience where goals of efficiency or accuracy matters less. And to explore these big questions, we chose spirituality, specifically prayer, as a key human experience to situate our project in. And we chose prayer because it is a deeply value-laden human experience, as well as an act where the process of the experience matters much more so than the end result. So our project had a two-phase. First, we conducted a diary and interview study to identify the key value present in one's praying experience. And based on these identified values, we came up with 4 conceptual AI systems and asked our participants to sort of evaluate the design. And in doing so, our goal was not to design AI solutions for prayers, but our goal was to provoke discussions and complicate the notion of using AI in these deeply value-laden human contexts with AI. All right, so in the first phase of our study, we conducted a diary and interview study to elicit key values and practices in praying experiences. The first value was self-improvement. Prayer was a way for participants to reflect on their daily lives. And to do so, many of them kept notes of what they did throughout the day and used it for Thanksgiving prayers. Second value was serenity. Many prayed about their troubles and concerns. And here their goal was not to resolve this situation, but it was about finding peace in mind through disclosing their concerns to this divine being. And the third was the spiritual community, which acted as an important part in provoking them to be more diligent in praying and also learning about new methods or topics in prayers. And finally, they valued authenticity in prayer, which was to seeking about a genuine connection to the divine, between themselves and the divine, and considered technology as mediating these private experiences as diminishing this particular value. And based on these values and practices, we came up with 4 conceptual AI systems for prayer. And once again, our goal here was not to create AI-based design solutions to make prayer more effective or efficient. Rather, the design was meant to be a generative provocation. So basically, by providing a concrete design concepts and scenarios, participants were able to provide a more grounded evaluation on why they do or do not want AI in prayer, beyond the generic statements like, oh, I just don't like it. So we presented 4 conceptual designs to our participants. First one is called the Daily Thankful. And it is a system that tracks your digital footprint and informs you of specific instances that you could use for Thanksgiving prayer, like, oh, your mother messaged that I love you today, or you took a picture of this beautiful sunset. The second one is Question for Your Prayer. It is a conversational AI system that helps you deepen your prayer. So one day you feel like your prayer was rather shallow, and you can enter your prayer journal to the system, and the agent will ask you thought-provoking questions like, what do you think of this particular Bible verse regarding your situation? Third is prayer of the past, inspired by Will Odom's amazing slow technology. It prints a past prayer journal entry. While this resurfacing may appear in random, the AI agent actually accounts for the user's recent state to select entries that may be meaningful or supportive for their particular situation. And finally, prayer of the other similarly presents other people's prayer entries related to your own prayer when you enter your own journal. So we presented these concepts in a form of what's called a design workbook, detailing the intention and the use case scenarios to our participants. So in total, 21 Korean Christian participants read each and all of them and evaluated why they would or would not use these systems. And among our many findings that I will not be able to present due to time constraints, perhaps one of the most important findings was that our participants did not want AI to do the work on behalf of themselves. So let us compare daily thankful and question for your prayer. Now, as for daily thankful, the agent looked for moments that the users could pray for on behalf of the users. And some participants said that what makes a Thanksgiving prayer very meaningful is the identifying of the moments that they could be thankful for through one's own will and agency, and the AI doing that for them sort of takes the meaning out of it. Conversely, some participants preferred the question for your prayer for this very reason. They found the agent asking questions and not giving you direct answers as retaining the agency to shape their own praying experience. Now, this finding may connect us to broader discussions in human-AI relationship. Our work showcased that for some experience, people don't want the AI to live and work on their behalf. Surprising, even if it means that they have to endure the inefficient, task-heavy, and arduous experience. And this is because for some experience, it is the process that matters much more so than the result of getting things done. And similar findings have already been discussed in other works, such as how virtual pilgrimage erodes efficacy because the value lies not in the result of visiting this space, but about the arduous, inefficient, and challenging process of the pilgrimage itself. So, there's a glitch. In short, the result that we wanted to discuss is how people want to retain agency in shaping their experience. So how might we design AI systems that balance and accounts for the agencies between human and AI agents? We discussed several strategies. I'll introduce two of them today. And the first is to utilize AI as a catalyst rather than a problem solver. Now, as showcased in our findings, participants valued interaction when the AI helped them dig deeper through questions. And here the AI's role was not about providing answers to the problems that user was having, but simply nudging or expanding the scope of possibility through provocation. And this argument may stand for other process-oriented experiences like creative writing or drawing, because the goal is not in the creation itself as a result, but it's about the experience of going through that arduous process. Second is used to use the inexplicability of an AI as a room for human agency. Now, the notion of explainability, black box, is often considered as something to be resolved or unpacked in the field of AI. But in our study, participants found that this very obscurity provides users with a form of efficacy. So for example, in the case of prayer of the past, so an agent that seemingly randomly presents your past prayer entry, the AI doesn't really tell you why it's surfacing this particular prayer to the user. But the participants sort of shared that they would be able to interpret why this particular prayer was resurfaced to them, because it must have been the divine's will, or there must have been some kind of different reason for it. And here, while the agent does not give them a clear reasoning behind the recommendation, participants are exercising their agency to make the interaction meaningful for themselves. So to end, I return to the question of what do we mean by a better AI system? The notion of betterness in AI often head towards a universalized notion of efficacy, efficiency, and accuracy, but human life is so much more than that. It is also about the process and experience of doing, and it's not just about the outcome of maximization of this or optimization of that. That said, I would like to end our presentation with our recent words by our Pope Leo in the Magnificat Humanitas. So, if human being is treated as something to be perfected or surpassed, it becomes easier to accept that some lives are less useful, less desirable, or less worthy. In the name of progress, necessary sacrifices may begin to be justified, placing the burden on the most vulnerable in pursuit of a supposed optimization of the species. And for this reason, a clear distinction must be made. It is one thing to integrate technology within a human-centered relational vision. It is quite another to be guided by an outlook that devalues human limits and promises a purely technical form of salvation. So thank you very much for listening to this very long session. I once again thank my co-authors and also Karen for lending me this wonderful laptop because my laptop was not working. Thank you very much.
Great talk, thank you. And yes.
Just leave it up so in case you need to go to
Yeah. Like a really great talk. I love your notion of like the perfect AI system not means for efficiency or efficacy, and also love the idea like the users didn't want to like outsource their prayer into AI. And one question I have is like, was there any difference between the like among the users that they want to use the tool differently by their like ways of their belief or like their practicing, or like I think if their practice will be different by what they pursue or what they follow. So I was curious about that.
All right, thank you for that question. And also thank you for being such an attentive audience because you were smiling and nodding and I was like, I feel validated. So, so the question was asking about different ways of beliefs and how AI agent could sort of intertwine with those different belief systems. Sadly, we only engaged with the Christian population within Korea, so Protestants and Catholics to be particular. And I think prayer in such Christian context is more of a communication between the divine and the user or participants or the believer themselves. And the agent of AI was interesting in this context because they saw AI as a mediator or an interference of a natural connection that they have with the divine. So that's where much of this discussion sort of took place. But I also know that there are a lot of different beliefs. For example, Buddhism doesn't really have a deity. They sort of perfect themselves in a very reflective manner, not so much to like pray their like Thanksgiving or anything, but it's also about reflecting on their own life and perfecting themselves, which I'm sure will lead to other forms of experiences. And I definitely do look forward to more works that are engaging with more diverse ways of belief systems, much like the workshop that Sylvia has conducted on pluriversal ways of understanding our world. So yes, thank you so much for the question.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. It was very clear. That's why it generates a lot of questions. I find your work very techno-solutionist, in my own opinion, for something that is very subjective, personal, human. In Nature Right, we have explored the use of robots for religious purposes, and I have found the idea a little bit silly. The experiments are not great in my opinion. Yours is very well structured and meaningful. But saying so, from this perspective, this philosophical perspective, makes sense the response that you got from the users about, a middleman between the subjective experience of whatever religious activity is and the AI present. Have you considered consult experts in the topic, like theologists or religious leaders? I think that could be valuable, right? I'm very sure it will be a very conservative approach to this. Certainly their views could be a good insights for you. What are your thoughts about it? About the philosophy behind your work?
Of course. Thank you for that question. I have three reactions and responses, 3 parts reactions and responses to the question. First of all, I'm a little heartbroken that you took this presentation as a techno-solutionistic one because there literally is a section that I sort of say that we should use AI for a spiritual context in the actual paper. There is a section on non-use and how AI practitioners should recognize the notion of non-use as a valid choice in design because we can't just put on AI on whatever experience that we find meaningful, just like we saw at a different conference where like more than 80% of the session was AI solutionistic. I'm not going to name which conference, but it was in Barcelona. And the second one is about consulting religious experts, right? I think that would be like a very important future work in terms of it. There actually has been a lot of work that engages with theologians or pastors before the age of AI era, like Susan Weichi and Elizabeth Bowie. Their work has already talked to the pastors, and their work sort of showcased the tension between the religious context and technological usage. And they sort of frame this as like, not a fight, but kind of like a fight between religion and science, because it has always stood in a different side of the world. And we're sort of like mitigating those dynamics. And I definitely think that having that conversation like decades later, now that AI has arrived, could lead us to some very important discussions. And also, the final comment is about the evolving nature of spiritual practices, because one of our participants mentioned that before COVID era, using PPT presentations or doing like a remote service through Zoom was considered a hearsay. And then the pandemic hit, and we weren't allowed to meet in person for like 3 years. So then the church started adopting these digital devices, and now post-pandemic, all churches do like remote services in Korea. Not all, but many. So we can see how this seemingly grandiose and very traditional foundational forms of religious authority adapting and evolving alongside this technological infrastructure as we go forward. Much like how Pope Leo literally wrote like a 3,000-page discussion on how they're going to respond to AI systems. So I think it is our role and responsibility as scholars in the field of design and HCI to be sort of attentive to these changes that are happening, both inside and outside the academia, and sort of examine what this means and what this implication is, not to predict it and or prescribe it, but to provoke these discussions and have these venues to, just think about these important questions. Thank you very much.
Can we do one more last question and then wrap this up? Yeah.
I'll make it quick. So thanks for the engaging talks. And I just want to touch upon a little bit about, did you think about the rhythm of agency? For example, would you suggest like AI agency remain quite low during the whole praying process, or you will recommend starting from really high AI agency and then human agency increase, and then what's the flow would you propose?
Thank you for the question, and I apologize for taking up everyone's coffee break. Please feel free to eat if you want food. Agency is a very big term. I was actually asked about this term during my pre-proposal or qualification exam by my wonderful advisor, who is sitting over there. The notion of agency we draw from the work of Barzel. They define subjectivities in subjects. It is sort of one's own willpower to exercise to carve out their experience in a structure that they're thrusted upon. So as you said, it is not the notion of I want to do whatever I want to, but it's also about the constant negotiation between the structure that you're residing in and how you're going to sort of negotiate that with other entities that are present within this dynamic, be it a human or a non-human entity. And in those terms, I think the rhythm of agency is a very poetic and a wonderful way to sort of put that, because it is not just about, oh, I'm going to take the entire agency and that's it, but it's like a constantly going onward and backwards of like you having more agency in shaping this experience and me taking that back, and then now I have to kind of like a conversation going on. So in our paper, in describing these design choices, you can actually see for each design concept how we sort of envisioned, for this design, the AI will assume this much agency, but which will proceed to change after this kind of interaction. It's described in more detail, so I definitely do ask you to read it more in detail, and I would not want to take more of the time, but thank you very much for the question.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you all for being so much patient, and thank all the authors too.